Stangibelisco here, with take number 2 or attempt number 2 on my Gaia related theme concerning the end of civilization. Please refer to the video that you will find in the link at the end of the description of this one. That is just below the video. You know, you tap on the appropriate little arrow and you get a little link. It is James Lovelock delivering a less than 3-minute conclusion that he has reached concerning the demise of civilization and how he believes that it is inevitable, that it is too late for us to do anything about what he calls global heating, that the environmental movement is all for naught. It's for the profit of certain political interests and nothing more at this point, because what's coming is coming and there's nothing that we can do about it. It's a rather gloomy video, because he suggests that at most 1 billion people will remain after the chaos to come, and he warns that that chaos could come very rapidly and not too long before it starts. He talks in his other videos about an unstable system, the ecosystem, being driven possibly by human activity into a state of chaos where things fluctuate wildly and unpredictably, and most importantly, rapidly. He shows the Arctic ice melting and warns that within a few decades it's going to be entirely gone. There will be no more ice in the Arctic Ocean. The Arctic Ocean will be open water, which will absorb far more sunlight than the ice does now. Open water doesn't reflect the sunlight back into space nearly as well as ice does, and he argues therefore that the ocean temperature will rise, the volume of water will increase because the volume increases as the temperature increases, catastrophic rise in sea level will take place. Oh, just a very gloomy picture indeed. And he says there's really no escaping it. There's something that he's neglecting, though, in all of this. When he talks about the melting of the Arctic ice, he's forgotten that it will also increase in the evaporation rate from the polar region. That will cause a permanent and solid overcast to form over the Arctic zone. And those clouds will reflect sunlight back into space just as much as the ice did, and when it will in addition prevent as much sunlight from reaching the surface in the first place. What happens then? It's probably impossible for me to say, I will tell you that. But I can speculate. I would speculate that instead of the prevailing high pressure that exists now over the Arctic region, where the North Pole is dominated by high pressure and a gigantic anticyclone exists between about 60 or 70 degrees north latitude and the pole itself, that will be replaced by a cyclone instead, a counterclockwise low pressure system. The result of that will be abundant precipitation, and although it will fall largely over water, it will also fall over the northern portions of Canada and Siberia and northern Europe, Greenland, and places like that. And it's difficult to say what the result will be. But one thing's for pretty certain: if it's cool enough, it'll be snow. And suppose that snow accumulates and accumulates and accumulates 500, 1,000, 1,500, 3,000 meters deep until it compresses into ice, and the sheer weight of it causes the ice to begin to ooze on the continents towards the south. Eventually they'll reach an equilibrium point. The last time that happened, we called it the Great Ice Age, and it only ended about 10,000 years ago. Homo sapiens and Gaia both survived that, and I say that what's about to happen is something on that order. Not a global overheating catastrophe, but quite the contrary. Gaia will, in a way, overcompensate for global heating and cause an ice age to occur, at least in the northern hemisphere. Now, in the southern hemisphere, the situation is much more difficult. I've not even heard anybody talking about what's going to happen in Antarctica, but suppose that that region also became warmer. Instead of water, you'd have a landmass. That would absorb a lot of sunlight, and depending upon whether or not there was enough moisture, there may be an overcast, in which case you'd get a climate something like that now exists in Seattle or northern parts of England or northern parts of Europe, or you would get a desert of some kind or another. Whatever the case may be, the climate is going to change dramatically. But as for the earth incinerating and baking in oven-like heat, I don't believe so. I think what's going to happen instead is that we're going to live in a cooler world. It'll still cause mass die-off of Homo sapiens, but not for the reasons that James Lovelock is suggesting. Not that it makes a whole lot of difference. Starvation, war, diseases of various sorts, and intolerable and very difficult to cope with weather and climate and meteorological changes. The four horsemen really ride, he says, when conditions get as they are now, and he says that it's going to happen soon, and it's going to happen with great changes for humanity. You're looking forward to it? I don't know whether I am or not. I would have to say I don't know if I'm going to live long enough to see the full consequences. But if you're a great-grandparent or a grandparent, chances are your grandchildren or great-grandchildren will live to see. Whether they survive or not is another matter entirely. But I also submit that there's a fifth horseman out there. A fifth horseman that perhaps will defeat Gaia, and I'll talk about that maybe in another video sometime. But the fifth horseman is like Ichabod Crane's headless horseman. It rides in the dark, identity unknown. But one thing's for sure, when it gets you, it's gonna get you good. Happy nightmares on a fine day in June. It hasn't started storming yet. I'm surprised. It's supposed to. Stangibelisco signing off. Until next time, so long.